Today, the Dark Souls tabletop game is really difficult, but actually for the wrong reasons. This is CheckPoint. Welcome to CheckPoint, where today it's the day after a day where people smoke weed.
That's every day.
Happy 421, everybody.
Niantic wants you to get into pet play.
No!
Look, Beach had to miss this week, but I wanted to honor his spirit.
You cannot do a sex point segment.
How little do you think of me? I wasn't going to do a sex point segment.
Good.
Paul, can you do a little, find a replace for me? Look, kink point is a better pun.
But then I can't shame you.
Niantic wants you to play their new game. It's called Peridot. It's AR Tamagotchi, or AR Neopets, whichever comparison makes you nostalgically go, Peridots are magical creatures, and players take care of them by walking around with them, feeding them, and presumably purchasing microtransactions. The beasts are all unique, and you can crossbreed them with other Peridots to produce offspring that have desirable appearance archetypes like glitter, and peacock, and nose too short to breathe. But Peridot isn't just all stud fees and spreadsheets. You also need to care for your perfect little inbred boy. Niantic has said that Peridots will have desires that you need to meet by playing with them or taking them to see local points of interest / Pokemon gyms. And honestly, this sounds exhausting and anxiety-inducing. I can barely feed, nurture, and walk myself these days. And if I am not moisturized and in my lane, how can my Peridot be?
Time for some updates on Activision Blizzard, and this first one might initially sound positive, but wait for the drop. ABK has said they will convert their US-based temporary and contingent quality assurance positions to paid full-time jobs, which means nearly 1,100 workers will now all receive $20 an hour full-time positions and receive full bonuses and benefits. That's great. No jokes. Yet. It's truly very good for all parties involved. And by all parties involved, I mean ABK and the 1,100 QA workers getting this upgrade. Because one of the parties not involved is the 20 Raven software QA workers who, it could be argued, started this whole push when their contracts were not among the 500 converted to full-time last year, going so far as to form a union. Or try to. The Game Workers Alliance, led by the Raven Software QA workers, got 78% of the eligible vote to unionize, but ABK wouldn't recognize the union, so now the decision sits with the National Labor Relations Board. I guess then it shouldn't be surprising that ABK omitted specifically those people, but the company claims it's not out of malice, but because they aren't allowed to offer anything new to those employees due to their legal obligations to the National Labor Relations Board, which the Communication Workers of America, who represent the Game Workers Alliance, says is not true, calling the ABK statement a completely disingenuous announcement, which ABK responded to by saying it was actually the union that was being disingenuous. Look, I just hope these 20 people, who ABK claims has nothing to do with their decision to full-time all these QA testers, finally get what they're owed. In further ABK news, settling, because this one's wild. Remember how they're being sued by the state of California? Specifically California's Department of Fair Employment and Housing, because of all the awful and sexist stuff they allegedly did and continue to do to their employees. Well, that's still ongoing, but with different lawyers now, because the assistant chief counsel for the DFEH has resigned, because the chief counsel was fired by the governor of California. In her resignation letter, former Assistant Chief Counsel Melanie Proctor said that Governor Gavin Newsom's office repeatedly interfered with their work, that the interference increased as the DFEH achieved wins in the state court, and that the interference mimicked the interests of Activision's lawyers. The former chief counsel, Jeanette Whipper, confirmed to Ars Technica that she was indeed fired by Governor Newsom, despite Newsom's office recently reappointing her to that role, and that she's considering many avenues of legal recourse, including the state of California's Whistleblower Protection Act. Earlier I said the QA thing was on its face, no jokes, real good. Well, this is no jokes, real bad. Except for maybe the joke that is expecting the wealthy and powerful to ever see consequences. But I've just heard that one so many times by now.
Do you remember when Resident Evil 8 came out and everyone wanted to get stepped on by Lady Dimitrescu so bad that a bunch of folks relearned geometry so they could figure out just how tall the big steppy lady was? Well, it turns out math isn't just for things that make you horny, it's also for the Erdtree. According to YouTuber Zuli the Witch, the Erdtree stretches 4,452 meters from ground level to the tip of its highest branch. That's as high as a mountain, or 1,540.48 Lady Dimitrescu's. Interestingly, the Erdtree's trunk also extends almost 600 meters underground, giving it a total height of 5,048 meters. That's as tall as another mountain, or 1,746.71 Dimitrescu's. And those extra 206 Dimitrescu's, that's the good stuff.
A new patch is being released for Dark Souls, the tabletop RPG. And by patch, I mean they're correcting and reprinting the whole dang thing, because it's apparently riddled with errors. The Collector's Edition rulebook was released in the UK and Europe late last month, and immediately players noticed it was full of not just typos or grammatical issues like inconsistent capitalization of game terms or UK and US spellings being used alternately in the same paragraph, but even full-on game problems. Among the many notes in this community-assembled Google document are such things as a passage on natural 20s that reads, "This is called a critical hit," which is explained later in this chapter, and then isn't explained in the book. Or, my favorite, how a knight, no matter what origin they choose, cannot get a high enough strength stat to wear the starting knight armor. Since developer Steamforged Games have finally acknowledged and apologized for these errors and said that they will replace any already shipped incorrect books, the community is fairly positive for a group that just had to do a final QA pass on a book they paid for. Still better than the video game community, who would be poo-pooing these changes as nerfs and not Miyazaki's original intent, while high-fiving each other that they beat the game pre-nerf with an armorless knight as originally intended. Speaking of which, there's a new patch out for Elden Ring that's brought a startling amount of changes, especially for spellcasters. Apart from increased multiplayer stability and fixing it so that one kind of particularly angry dog doesn't just straight up kill you quite so badly, the patch rolls out buffs for 18 sorceries and 33 incantations. So players with builds focused on intelligence and faith must be absolutely over the dark moon with delight reading these patch notes, while primarily strength-focused players can't read.
You play a strength build.
I do. I both Unga and Bunga at the same time.
And how's that going for you?
Oh, very badly.
Coming up, Hasbro has bought D&D Beyond. They paid a cool $146.3 million for the service, which is 10% cheaper than buying all the source books individually. You know how I said a mountain and another mountain?
Yes.
So they're real. Those are mountains.
You had specific mountains in mind?
Yeah.
Oh, tell me, please.
Okay, well, the thing is, they're not very interesting mountains, and they're not.
I disagree.
They're not exactly. They're not exactly the same height. It's all like they're like 1 or 2 meters off. So I just Googled tallest mountains in the world, and Wikipedia has an unofficial list of. Because, like, you know, it's just like it says right at the top of the Wikipedia page. This is an unexhaustive list of every mountain height in the world. And so, yeah, there are mountains that are very close. There's just like 2 mountains in the Urals, or in the Caucasus. So they're like somewhere in like Georgia, the other Georgia.
So 4,452, the shorter one. That's in the
the Caucasus, and there's another mountain in the same in the Caucasus. It's just like. Apparently the Erdtree, maybe this is like a real life thing, that some sort of Elden Ring inspiration. Probably not. But yeah, that's the Erdtree is about as tall as a mountain in the Caucasus. Take your pick.
Neat. And they're fairly consistent in height.
I mean, I didn't check every mountain in the Caucasus. I was just really skimming down the list looking for one.
All right, well, you better get started then. It's going to take you a while to get there.
Okay, that's fine. I felt bad, and I felt that people would disrespect me if I didn't list the names of the mountains.
I felt a little let down.
Yeah, I mean, like, one of these mountains doesn't have a Wikipedia page, so there's only so much information I can give you on short notice. But there is a mountain that is 5,047 meters tall.
Oh, that's very close.
It's very close. That's called Mizhirgi. That's
Cool.
supposed to be in Russia. And there is a mountain that is 4,451 meters tall in Georgia on the border of Russia called Gorgashan.
All right.
Oh, Gorgashan does have its own Wikipedia page. The name means icy mountain. Nice. But it is said to be, according to some, the abode of the Hindu god Shani.
Oh,
So, yeah.
there we go. Mountain trivia. Thank you.
It's on the Wikipedia page for the list of European ultra-prominent peaks.
Nice. Speaking of yesterday being hashtag 420, I didn't... Sorry.
Puff, puff, pass, am I right?
Got water caught in my throat. I didn't do this story because it's about Call of Duty, and I don't want to be like, look at all these terrible things Activision does and then give them free advertising. But I am going to tell you about this.
I looked at the story, too.
Yeah, that they introduced Snoop Dogg as an operator in Warzone.
Yeah.
And what I find interesting about it is that, like, every single thing about him and, like, the ornaments you can buy and the guns that you can buy for him and the emotes and the finishers or whatever, everything is just, like, oppressive with weed references. And I'm like, I cannot imagine this happening when I was younger.
No, I mean, seriously, you get like a little weed medallion, your spray or whatever, so you can graffiti things is like a weed thing. It's like a weed leaf, and like
The guns are covered in nugs.
His gun, one of his guns is literally called the Bong Ripper.
Yeah.
Right? It's like apparently it's like just ridiculous. They shoot weed, the green smoke comes out of the front. It's like, imagine what. Okay, this costs $20 real life dollars to make weed your personality the way a 14-year-old kid who's just discovered weed for the first time does.
Yeah.
Just put up a fucking black light Grateful Dead poster.
Snoop Dogg's got voice lines. Like, it's preposterous. This just seems like the next thing that some parent group is going to be, like, whirled up into a tizzy about. Right. Because, like, Call of Duty is allowing the weed.
Well, what's the age rating on Call of Duty?
They don't care. It's rated mature.
Well, then, this is for mature weed-smoking people who want to be like, bongs are my personality.